This is a brand new episode of Flyers Daily presented by Ticketmaster. Make more memories live. It's Jason Myrtetus, and I'm with two of the voices of the Philadelphia Flyers, the television play-by-play announcer Jim Jackson and the radio play-by-play announcer of Tim Saunders, and a whole lot of years of experience between the two of you. What's going on, boys?
That means we're old, are you, Jason? Yes.
We are.
Yeah.
We are all old. Where I want to start, actually, is here, because I've been doing the games now. I think this will be my 15th or 16th season, but not all of that time was I just a hockey guy, and because I had the radio show that I was doing, so I had some kind of regiment to my schedule even in the summertime when it wasn't hockey season. But since 2019, I have been in this mode, and I still have not gotten used to the on of the season, and really, for the most part, off of the off season. I haven't found a way to adapt to it and enjoy it. Do you like JJ? Do you enjoy the off season? To me, it's the first 40 days, and then I start climbing the walls. My wife's like, "You got to go back to work."
Yeah, well, first of all, you don't get an off season, Jason. Every time I turn it on, you have a new podcast all summer long. So, yeah, but for me, I went 14 years doing baseball, hockey, so I didn't get an off season. So now this is my fourth summer without the Phillies. I love it. I thoroughly enjoy the off time and try to get away from hockey as much as I can for about a month in the middle. But really, you can't through the draft, through free agency. So into mid-July, I'm still into it. Usually that late July into August, I kind of get away a little bit. And then I start ramping it up in August. The NHL.com puts out their 32 and 32. That's sort of my signal to start getting involved with prep. So I start doing that, but it's not heavy. It's a little dose of hockey each day, starting in like late August. And, and then camp gets there. And I know, Timmy, you were there, and actually rookie camp. So officially, once the rookies hit the ice, to me, it's hockey season again.
Tim, when you're a guy, you burn hot for the entire season, and last year was a little even more different. I remember on exit day talking to the players, and they seemed almost stunned because literally the season ended in the second period the night before. Yeah. We're going, are we going to have a playoff series in 3 days?
Yeah,
and then you get an email when you're eliminated. Hey, exit day is tomorrow. Be at the facility at 8 a.m. And it's like, whoa. How's that hard stop affect you, and how's that changed over the years?
Well, first of all, I burn hot. Probably qualifies in a lot of ways to me.
Yeah, I just golfed with him yesterday, and he was burning hot on the golf course.
And if I play a lot of golf, and I say I play a lot of bad golf in the summer, that's not conducive to golf. So after I shoot a few rounds in the high 90s, I'm pretty sure that I may not have the emotional makeup to be a good golfer, but it's a good giveaway. It's weird, Jace, because for me, at the end of the season, it's always with some mixed emotions. You're always disappointed that you've been eliminated, because everybody will be, except for the team that wins the cup. I from the minor league days where you wore different hats, and in a couple of spots I was a PR director, I was doing sales. I dreaded the end of the season for those reasons, because we still had responsibilities over the summer, doing things that I wasn't at all comfortable doing. And that became almost an identity crisis for me when I was forced to serve a role that I wasn't really there in my mind to serve, you know what I mean? And it wasn't comfortable. Now that I don't have to deal with that, you look forward to having time off because you're emotionally exhausted at the end of the season. If you do it right. So I'm sure the players and the coaches deal with that a little bit too. They're ready to have some time off, but you're never ready for it to end when it ends, if that makes sense.
JJ, why is it that the offseason, I know it is longer when you don't make the playoffs, but if you make it just one round and make it 12 days of a playoff, the offseason feels exponentially shorter than it does when you just don't make it. You've obviously been a part of a lot of big playoff runs, but not making it, and over the past couple of years, I mean, they made it in the bubble, but that almost doesn't even count. It's so incredibly long when you don't get a ticket to the party.
It is, I guess, really, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. 18 was the last time we had a regular
Home playoff
postseason
game.
where the Flyers were playing. That's the last time, obviously, one at Wells Fargo. So that's the last time we experienced that because the bubble.
That's about 5 coaches ago.
Yeah.
Dave Haxtall was the
It's
coach.
a long time ago, yes.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's totally different. You get in. First of all, you get into the playoffs. Timmy and I do a lot of prep. You're going 100 miles an hour during the regular season. You go 120 during the playoffs. You're just immersing yourself in it. There's interviews. There's everything. There's excitement. So if you're going 100 miles an hour and you come to a stop when the regular season ends, when you're in a playoff series, it's like you're going 150 and it comes to a stop because you don't know if it's going to stop and you think you might go to the next round. For me, I know I'm done after one round, so that changes it a little. Timmy does not have that, so that changes it a little bit. But I would assume I'd still be involved in some way after the first round. So you're emotionally not quite sure what it ends when you're in the playoffs. Whereas the regular season, unless you're like last year, if you know you're out, you know that there's an end date to it all. So yeah, it definitely takes a little while, I think, to wind down after a playoff elimination. As opposed, last year was kind of like that, even though they didn't make the playoffs. It was kind of like a playoff elimination emotionally because it came so late. But normally, regular season, you have that end date. Playoffs, you're not sure when that end date is, so it takes a little more time to wind down for me. I actually remember on some of the long runs that it would take 2 or 3 days to even want to do anything. You're just drained and you're ticked that it didn't go on, and you're thinking about what could have been and all this. So it took a little while. When you're eliminated early in a regular season, or you're out going into the final week or two, you don't have that. You've already been going through that emotionally. So I think that, Jason, extends your involvement when you're in the playoffs. So maybe that shortens the offseason a little bit. We haven't had that lately. I have been fortunate enough to do some TNT games, so that got me extended into the offseason a little bit too. And that was great emotionally, but that's not like Flyers emotion. That's still not, I mean, it's just as much work. It's more work actually, but it's not that, that's orange and black, you're emotionally tied to the team result kind of thing. So it's really, I think eventually we're going to get back to that. I think soon. I don't know about you guys. I think it could happen this year where we go into the playoffs, you're into that emotional high, and you, at some point, unless you win the cup, you experience that dead end stop. It's been a while since we've gone through that, but bittersweet for sure in terms of a regular season end. It's more bitter than sweet when it's a playoff end, and that's why I think you take a little longer to get over it. But for the most part, after those 2 or 3 days, I am, as Timmy said, it's not like we just show up and do the games. We're pretty much working every day all season long. And the rare time, like this year, we're going to get the time off during the Four Nations. But in a normal season where you don't have that break, we might get, Timmy, 5 or 6 days where we don't have anything to really do because maybe there's 3 days off between games and no travel or something. There's not many. I mean, we're preparing.
Yeah, there's still not days off, though. You're still going, I have something I have to prepare for in a couple of days.
There are, but I mean, I like to try to get away. Like, if let's say they play a Saturday night game and don't play again until Tuesday, I might just immerse myself in football on Sunday and not do a whole lot of prep. So you try to get as much as you can. But still, for the most part, regular season, we're working almost all year. There's no weekends off. You get to the end, and it's you got to take a deep breath and then try to enjoy things. And as Timmy says, until we get out of the golf course, we're having fun, and then we get out of the golf course and realize what we really do for a living, and we want to get back to that.
Yeah, after a round like yesterday, I'm pretty ready to go back to work because clearly I'm not going to be a golfer.
So's the grounds crew. I've always said broadcasting is like an iceberg. You only see a little. You see the tip of it, but you don't see all the work that goes into the tip that's above the water. You don't see all the prep. There's a ton that goes into it.
Yeah, that's more true than I think most people realize. And when people ask me, how much time do you spend prepping versus actually doing the game? Doing the game is the easy part. That is a blink of the eye. You prep probably, I always say, at least 3 times longer for a game than it takes to call the game. So that's the one part of the business that most people don't really grasp.
Yeah, you guys posted sports talk radio too. People will be like, "Oh, you're on the radio for 4 hours a day. What a great job!" I'm going. You have 20 other hours, and no. As soon as you get off the air, you're worried about the next 4 hours you got. You can't get caught with nothing. You can't go, hey, here's Led Zeppelin.
I think that's tougher than what Timmy and I do, because it's just, first of all, it's different sports, but a lot of times you're talking about the same thing over and over again. You got to find new ways, and there's a lot of pressure. I remember with one of the lockouts, I did some talk, and I'm like, this is not just getting on, turning the mic on, and talking sports. It's a lot more than that. So there's toughness to that. The other thing, though, Timmy, I think you'd agree with, is the one good thing about all this, when we talk about all this prep, and it's fun. I mean, I love doing the prep. I love finding out about the other teams, diving into the bios, and obviously keeping up on the Flyers and all that. So, I mean, if I hated that, I doubt I'd be doing this for a living. So, don't tell any of our bosses, but I mean, I don't know if it's really work. It's fun for me. So,
yeah,
and I try to tell my broadcast coaching students, you got to really enjoy this, or you're not going to put this kind of prep in.
For me, it's a comfort level. Jace, the most comfortable place for me, and I assume this is true of Jimmy, is in the booth, maybe an hour, 2 hours before the game, because I know I've put what I think I need to do to be prepared for that game. And you lose that comfort level if you haven't put the work in. And
you get real nervous, some anxiety kicking in.
So you just can't ever let that happen. The definition of a pro, and this applies to players, this applies to coaches, you figure out over a period of time what you have to do to prepare yourself, to have the things that you think you need to have prepared. And that takes X number of hours. And sometimes you don't have X number of hours, or you may have more time or less time between games. It's a true professional won't look to cut corners. In my mind, you do it. And you prepare the same way for every game, have the same stuff ready for every game, because if you don't, then you sit in that chair and you don't have that comfort level.
And you know what I say to my broadcast students? I say, it's just like an athlete. We often hear about this, right, Jace? The athlete being in a zone, whether it's hockey, the net looks bigger, or you feel faster. Basketball, obviously, the net looks bigger. Baseball, the ball looks like a beach ball. Football, you feel bigger and stronger. Well, as broadcasters, we like to get to our zone too. And the only way to get to that zone is to, when that puck is dropped, to feel, as Timmy just said, that you've got everything within reason covered. I mean, are we ready for anything? No, this is live television, live radio, live sports. Al Michaels got ready in 1989 to call a World Series game. He ended up calling an earthquake. So, no, we are not always ready for everything that's going to happen. But if you feel like you're ready for anything within reason to happen in that game, I say you're in your broadcaster zone, and you're going to be better.
And here's the other thing, Jace, you have to get your head around. And it takes a while, and it's frustrating at times. But part of our prep is having storylines at the ready in case it becomes relevant. And you might have 30 really good storylines that you hope to be able to get into the broadcast, but you can't force those into the broadcast. So when they're appropriate, you're ready for them. But you might use 10 or 15% of your prep work actually in the broadcast, and the majority of it never gets in. You just got to get your head around the fact that
it's part of the
that
deal.
May be the case, and you don't keep prepping because most of it's not going to make the broadcast.
I worked with Angelo Cataldi for many years, and I just had him on for our 100th episode of Odd G's with Harry to talk about his career, and I've never seen a guy prepare like that.
His energy level is unbelievable.
Day in and day out. Guy at top of the mountain, great ratings for years. Never cut a corner. Was in bed diligently at 6:30 every night. Was in the station at 3:30. Had legal pads full. And I asked him why. He never decided, hey, I'm at this point in my career. I don't need it, because he was so scared that he would need that stuff, and if it wasn't there, he'd fall apart.
Yeah.
Most days, you don't even need it. But it's your safety net.
Yep.
If I do need it, I've got it. I put in the work. Let me ask you guys about, there's an interesting word, and I think of it in relation to play-by-play announcers in sports quite a bit, and it's adrenaline. Sometimes, I know you guys are fanatical about, did I get the call right? Like, JJ, I look at your call last year of Owen Tippett's goal against the Dallas Stars to put the Flyers up 5-1. Oh. And as he's coming up the ice,
Thank you,
seemingly with his hair on fire, you say turbocharged.
Yeah.
You had no idea he's going to score there, but it turns into an epic call because he looked like he had a jetpack on his butt. And he goes in and he does this spinorama backhand bar down. How do you kind of hone in adrenaline, use it, but not abuse it?
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, adrenaline is amazing in that, and Timmy can relate to this for sure. You go into games with, let's say, not feeling well as a broadcaster, maybe a scratchy throat, whatever. I'm not saying you're very sick, but I get into that booth, and yes, we do our meds and all that or whatever, but it's funny, once the puck drops, most times all of a sudden I feel fine, and that's got to be adrenaline, right? So I guess that's what carries you.
That's
through.
the performative nature of the light going on.
Yeah. I mean, it happens a lot of times. I mean, there've been some times where, like last year, I barely made it through one game. You're so sick that even adrenaline won't help you. But most times it does kick in. But as far as within a call, I mean, that is just Owen Tippett making me look good. To be honest with you, and Timmy knows, there are a lot of times, probably 10, maybe 20 to 1, the times where I make a call and it's like, I could have been better at that. You always think you could make the call a little better. That's why I always advise people who are in broadcasting not to watch or listen to their broadcast back right after the game or even the next morning necessarily, because you have too much in your head as to what you were thinking is what you wanted to say. I always think when I watch myself back or listen, and I try to do it once in a while, I think it's good to make sure you're not overusing words, and we all do it. But I think if you do it every game and you do it right after the game, you're never going to be happy. You're going to be nitpicking yourself to death. If you do it like 2 or 3 days later, even after another game has been played, I always feel like I was better than I thought, because I'm not in my head as much about what I was thinking about saying on this particular rush or that particular dump in or that save or whatever. But yeah, adrenaline's interesting because you don't want to become I'll give you a story. My very first game here, preseason game against the Devils. So I'm pumped. I've just gotten an NHL job. I'm getting to work in the Spectrum, sitting there. Coatsy's my partner. You can't sit next to Coatsy and not have energy. And so I'm just full of more than just a little adrenaline, right? And I call the game. Flyers win. I'm feeling great. Coatsy says, great job. And we had a consultant back then who was basically talking to all the broadcasters just to go over, what they might improve on. And so he sat down with me the next day and he goes, hey, exciting call, all that, but I got to give you one piece of advice. Leave yourself someplace to go. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, well, you were exciting but I would have thought that was game 7 of a playoff series, not game 1 of a preseason. Leave yourself somewhere to go with the excitement level. And I fight that because I really love this game and I treat every game as like a must win kind of. So I have to rein myself back. If anything, do I succeed all the time? No, but I try. And as I'm getting older, I'm doing it more, I think. But yeah, adrenaline's good for the most part, but you don't want to get overamped too. And you don't want to start just yelling and screaming on every rush or going crazy on every save and all that.
Leave yourself a place to go.
Timmy, I'd much rather be excited too much than not excited enough. I do think there are some announcers out there who are having a conversation. Oh, by the way, here's a 2-on-1. I don't like that. I'd rather have you call the game.
It's commentary, not calling.
You mentioned sitting next to Coatsy and having to match that. That's actually called a contact high, I think.
Lots of contact.
Leave yourself a place to go, though, is absolutely something that I'm constantly aware of, and I think Jimmy knows this, so he and I have had long conversations about this. There is an absolute distinction between calling a game on TV and calling a game on radio. And in TV, you almost have to force yourself to kind of rein it in a little bit because the pictures are telling half the story. In radio, you don't have that flexibility or luxury. And so part of what you're doing, your inflection is everything, right? And your energy level. But leave yourself a place to go. You want a good call. If it's a rush up the ice like Owen Tippett, you want the crescendo. You want it to build. So you've got to force yourself to start low. Don't get overly hyped before the moment happens, because otherwise you have no place to go.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to really work at that this year with the young guy. because I think every time Mishkov touches the puck, we're going to kind of
just an excitement level.
Yeah, is he gonna do something spectacular? So
Right.
you ought to build up, as Timmy says.
I remember listening to, I think it was a Yankee Met game, and it was, I guess, John Sterling. It's hit, it's long, it's dry, and it's caught in the infield by Benny Agbayani. You're like, wait, what? You're like, what did he just say? I thought it was going out of the park. Shortstop got it.
I've had a couple of those, like with Ghost, that is last year or two of the Flyers. Like, he winds, he fires
Wide
into the corner.
The one thing, like, I think in broadcasting it takes time is to develop the art of nuance. You know, find your way. If I'm getting too excited and it doesn't pan out, I always have a trap door that I can kind of slide out of in a way. Nuance is really important. You guys both last year dealt with a similar prospect. You both had a new partner. JJ, you had Keith Jones for many years. He obviously moved into the president's role. Coatsy, who you both worked with, retires. So, Tim, talk about that adjustment. I mean, not just going from Coatsy to Fridge, but going from prop to Terrian to Coatsy to Fridge. What that process of, because you guys are broadcasters, your partners are not. They're former players, and there's a lot for them to learn. Some pick it up faster than other, and timing and brevity and all of those things. But what's that process like after working many years with a particular guy to now find the timing with a new color analyst?
Well, in my mind, it's almost up to the play-by-play guy to make whoever it is, whatever the personality is next to you, you got to make him comfortable and draw him into the broadcast. So it's my responsibility to make a guy that's not done it before relax enough where he can bring to the table what he was hired to bring. Fridge, I thought, did a phenomenal job. And going from Coatsy to a guy who had never done that or done very little of it, I wasn't sure if that was going to be a season-long process. Actually, he took to it way faster and way better than I anticipated. And bottom line, at least in my broadcast, in our radio broadcast, I want us to be having fun. Because if we're not having fun calling it, I can't imagine it's fun listening to it. Now, you don't want to go overboard with that, and the game is still the product. The game is everything. But you gotta. I kind of want us to sound like two guys sitting next to each other at a bar watching a game and talking about it. To me, that is more interesting and fun to listen to.
Yeah, and I've been blessed. My partners have all been national broadcasters. Before they came here or as they were here, Gary Dornhofer, Keith Jones, Bill Clement, and now Brian Boucher. The only time I've had to work with someone who's new at it is Scotty Hartnell right now, and he fills in for Boucher. And I'm really enjoying that, actually, working and watching Scotty grow as a broadcaster. So, but Timmy's absolutely right. I mean, you don't want it to sound really like play-by-play analyst, you want it to sound like two guys just taking the game in. I'll give most of the what, you give the why. I mean, there's some thoughts over there, but for the most part, I'm what, he's why. We have help, of course, and bells and whistles on TV with replays and graphics and so forth. We have to refer to radio. I love the freedom of radio. You can talk pretty much like you and Coatsy certainly did about anything. There's differences between the two mediums for sure, but I think what is absolutely common between them is that you don't want it to sound like, this old style broadcast. You want it to sound like two guys who like each other, having fun, describing Flyers hockey.
What's this question for both of you? What's the process been like over, I guess, the last 14 or 15 months, going from Keith Jones being Jonesy that had dinner with us and that you're on the road with and claims he doesn't work and all of those things, to now being the president of the organization? What has that process been like for you guys?
It's tough. I'm going to be flat out honest with you. For 17 years, if something happened in hockey, my first text was Jonesy. Timmy might have been first, second. I text Timmy a lot too. Sometimes he responds. But Jonesy was the guy because he has opinions on everything, and he's obviously so tied in nationally when he's doing the studio show, and than the national games. But now I don't feel comfortable doing that because, he's in a different role. He can't comment certainly on Flyers related stuff necessarily with me. And even stuff with other teams might involve a player the Flyers could be interested in. So he really can't comment on a lot of that. So I've lost kind of my go-to. Bush and I do now, and Bush is great. So I'm sure it's changing. But as far as with Jonesy, I've lost that, and it's different. And in our interactions, Timmy will tell you, if anything, he's even more of a ball buster now to us than he was when he was broadcasting. So that hasn't changed. So that part, relationship-wise, not as big a deal. Just the fact that I know there are certain areas that he can't go to anymore that I can't joke with him about or even ask his opinion on.
He is so much smarter than you initially think he is, or wants to project.
Yeah,
exactly.
He makes you think it. Yeah.
Yeah. He doesn't want you to know just how sharp he is. But I'll say the organization is in such good hands, putting hockey people like that in a position to dictate direction of where this franchise is going. I think Jimmy agrees. We both feel so much better with these recent changes of where we're headed.
Yeah, Dan Hilferty, right from the top, is just so good.
Yeah.
And Jonesy, as Timmy says, what's a dumb like a fox? Is that the saying? I mean, he is. he professes to be this bumpkin out there. He is so smart and so savvy. And Danny Briere is sharp as a tack. He's really a good general manager. They're absolutely and Torch. So I mean, they're obviously in a great place that way. And I try to tell everybody, I know 4 straight years out of the playoffs, but the vision is keep this team competitive now, and they are, and greatness, consistent greatness, not that in and out of the playoffs kind of stuff, but in the playoffs, and where every year you pick up your Hockey News preview magazine or you go to your website that has predictions, the Flyers are going to be one of the teams in the mix for a Stanley Cup, and I don't think that's that far off.
It is weird with him in that presence role, and I noticed it last year in training camp as we're going to the facility every day, that when you showed up to the rink and you went into the offices, there was a totally different feel and vibe that we hadn't experienced day to day in a very long time, and that just continued to accentuate through the year. Let's wrap up with this question, and again, it's one for both of you guys, because you guys were both here when Eric Lindros debuted as a Philadelphia Flyer. I remember, I think I was just out of high school, early college, and going to games, and just the level of excitement with a player of that kind of magnitude and status, pedigree, being a part of the organization. I remember listening to the radio when the arbitration hearing was determined that the Flyers, he was traded twice, but the Flyers, he was their property and it wasn't going to the Rangers. Like, it was so much excitement about the player. I don't know if it's the same now. Maybe it just feels like it's maybe more now because it's recent and because of social media. But Matvei Michkov is a player that I've said all along will put butts in seats and keep butts on the edge of seats, because he's going to touch the puck and you're going to be kind of, whoa, how did he do that? What's that process like, not having seen him play yet, but trying to keep it under control, but kind of feel what the fans are feeling here too with a high level of excitement. Tim?
I almost feel like I have to apologize and preface this with sort of an apology, because this isn't an organizational hat that I'm wearing. You also don't want to wear the hat of most fans. Most fans have already anointed this kid as the next superstar. And while this team has lacked the kind of talent level that he's potentially going to bring, the key word is potential. And it's so unfair for any kid to have to deal with that kind of pressure until he's had a chance to get comfortable and actually show that he can do it. So I temper everything by, let's just enjoy watching where this kid takes it. I do think he's going to be a star in this league, but it may not be immediate. It may take some time. And in fairness, this is the best league in the world with the best players in the world, and he's not going to step in and win a Hart Trophy immediately. It's going to be fun to watch, but let's give the kid a little breathing room.
Yeah, there is an arc of development and adjustment.
For sure. 2 things on that, Jason. I was here for the second year of Eric's, so I wasn't here for his rookie year, but the excitement around Lindros was probably greater than this. You have to understand, he wasn't considered just one of the top prospects. He was considered the next great player in the NHL, like the next, basically Gretzky.
He was basically Gretzky and Lemieux, the combination
Yeah,
size.
I mean, we're talking about people thought, and to be honest with you, if things had gone differently, I think it could have been the case. He was going to be the best player in NHL history. All right.
Yeah,
I don't
he
think
was most dominant.
Yeah, we're not saying that about Michkov. We're saying he's going to be a great player, maybe a franchise kind of player. I don't even like that term, to be honest with you. So, first of all, I don't think they're comparable quite to the same level. Now, if social media was around when Lindros was here, it would have been bonkers. So I think social media has obviously led to this hype, and that's why we feel maybe there's the same amount of hype as there was for Eric Lindros. Timmy's point, right on. I mean, he's 19. We have to take it easy on this kid. He's not going to necessarily have a hat trick in his first game and then score 70 goals. I mean, we have to calm down. But at the same time, it's exciting to have a player who fans are that excited about. So you want to temper them to say, hey, reality is reality. They're going to be growing pains. His game has to be rounded, which I'm sure Torts is already, figuring out how he's going to do that. And then obviously we have to see if all this talent, all this skill, which we've seen in all the clips, translates to the NHL. Just look at Connor Bedard last year. This was supposed to be, remember about it, the draft, last year's draft, not this past one, but the one before, the Bedard-Michkov draft, about 3 years before it happened. But then all the geopolitical stuff happened, and it just became the Bedard draft because there was so much uncertainty about Michkov's availability. When could he come over? Would he come over? All that. So it just became the Bedard draft. So that's how good he is. I mean, he's one of the top prospects out there for sure. But Connor Bedard became the Bedard draft. He won the Calder last year. His points numbers were fine. Timmy knows this. People we talked to that watched him play say he was a disgrace defensively. He has so much to learn.
Minus 44.
Yeah, and a lot of the minuses were on him. He turned the puck over a lot in his own zone. He's not close to a rounded player yet. Now, the fact that and obviously did not lift them up by himself, that doesn't happen, and the team around him was terrible, and they've kindly, this year they're giving him more to work with, and I think he's going to be a sensational player, and I love Connor Bedard's approach, his attitude, everything about it, but just look at him last year. He couldn't lift Chicago. Now, the Flyers this year are better than Chicago was last year for sure, so Michkov is joining a much better team than Bedard did, but to expect him to just take the Flyers to the Stanley Cup, that's a little much, but to appreciate, get excited about his ability and what he might bring. Nothing wrong with that at all. Bring it on. I think he could really help the power play. As I said earlier,
he can't hurt it, JJ.
No, can't hurt it. 3 straight years in the bottom, can't really hurt it. And I really think, that what I talked about earlier, that excitement when he touches the puck. The last Flyer, Tip has a little of that when he gets it revved up. But the last Flyer, it was probably Giroux, right? When he was really having his good years, and there was some of that when he touched the puck. What would he do? But there hasn't been a lot of that since going back to Lindros. Maybe a little of Giroux and some Tip, but Michkov's he's going to do some things that will drive his coach crazy, but will also, as you say, Jace, bring people out of their seats. So that's exciting. There's nothing to be ashamed of with that. Just as Timmy said, have some kind of, just temper it a little bit, because I don't want 2 weeks into the season, if the kid's not, just tearing it up, people to say, oh, he's a bust. I mean, and there will be that on social media if that happens.
Yeah. I mean, that one thing social media has proven is you can't fix stupid. That's for sure. I remember the goal Giroux scored. I think it was against Tampa Bay Lightning, where he goes through 4 or 5 guys and lifts the stick of the player while still possessing the puck. Just that ability to create a goal with no one else's assistance.
Yeah, he had a backhander against Columbus from the corner. Can you remember that one?
Falling down, yeah,
falling down.
No feet under him at all.
Ridiculous comeback. Yeah, that was one. He did have that. He did have that. But I think Michkov probably, if these clips are real, might have that to another degree, and that will be fun for Flyers fans.
Yeah, seeing a magical player in today's NHL, we see some of these super skilled guys, and to have that guy here and to be able to go through this, this career that's standing in front of him. We hope it's spectacular and it ends with cups. And boy, he says all the right things. If Slava, the interpreter, is giving us the right, he says the right things. It's all about team. So, guys,
by the way, on that point, Jace, we still haven't been able to talk to him to know, is it Michkov? We're still because Timmy and I are very, you know this, we're hardliners in this.
Yeah.
We get it from the player. So we got to do that in rookie camp or whatever. We got to get that done. We tried to get it done in the golf course yesterday, but I missed him a couple times. We just missed him.
Well, we'll see him this week.
Yes.
You guys will be joining the broadcast for preseason to varying degrees, television and radio. Brian Smith and I will have the broadcast of the 2 rookie games this weekend without Matt Rempe.
So thank you for that, by the way.
Yeah, it just means
thank you for doing those.
We'll be enjoying your call, Jason.
Yeah.
Well, for you guys, you only have about roughly 460 players to figure out who the heck they're playing against for the preseason games you're doing.
Timmy does all of them, and he does the early ones. I have it much easier. We just do the home games.
Yeah.
But Timmy, and this is I've watched how he goes and gets these rosters. What the Islanders, of course, would be the tough team, right, to get the roster from. But usually, what, Timmy, 3, 4, you're 2 weeks out. You're working on that, aren't you?
Here's the problem, Jace. For a preseason game, if a team's got 70 guys in camp, sometimes you won't learn the guys that are dressed for a game until you get to the rink that night.
Yeah.
So you have to prepare bios and that kind of information for all 70, and then when you find out which 20 are dressing, you go in and cut and paste and do it that way. There's no, you can't look for shortcuts. You can't do it any other way.
Well, miss the old split squad games in London, Ontario. Said no one ever.
Get rid of those split squads.
Yeah.
Hey, this had to be the easiest podcast you've ever done. You probably talked less in this podcast than any of them.
Well, I had Bill on Monday too.
In his mind right now, Timmy, this might be good on a weekly basis, sir.
Well, I was just thinking, can I cut this into 2 episodes? Really mail it in for Friday. Boys, thanks for doing this. Appreciate it.
All right, Jason.